Hi, I'm Mike Lamia. I'm a principal engineer for the customer advocacy team focused on Azure Stack within Dell EMC. Thank you for viewing this session on the Dell EMC cloud for Microsoft Azure Stack that we just announced last week. We're very excited about this. What is the offering? Very simple. It's bringing, it allows customers to bring Azure services into their data center with the ease and efficiency of a Dell EMC integrated system. And so the first thing that I want to do is take a look at the key design principles of our offering. First and foremost, it's an integrated system. That means that it is delivered at customers' dock, rack, in a cabinet, rack, stacked, cabled, configured, ready to deploy Azure services right on day one. And it's accompanied by a Dell EMC deployment engineer to help you with that. Who better to deliver an integrated system? Who can compare to the pedigree that Dell and EMC have in terms of integrated systems? Dell has partnered with Microsoft for the last several years on the predecessor to this offering, Cloud Platform System Premium and Standard. VCE with vBlock, VxRail, VxRack, Enterprise Hybrid Cloud, Native Hybrid Cloud. Nobody can come close to our combined experience in this area. Now, in addition to this being an integrated system, it is a closed system. What do we mean by that? That means that cloud administrators do not have access to the Hyper-V host layer. They do not have access to the management layer that's comprised of about 15, 20 virtual machines, some of them running containers and microservices. The entire system is completely sealed. Now, what does that do for customers? A, it helps them be relieved of the operational burden of putting together a solution that as complex as this for delivering Azure services on-prem. Makes it very easy to give it up and running without the operational burden. But secondly, probably more importantly, the ability to add new features and functionality at a very rapid cadence. It would be very difficult to do using a do-it-yourself approach. We're using a hyper-converged architecture for predictable and linear scale. We'll talk a little bit about how this solution scales out by what are known as scale units and regions. And then the fact that this is an Azure consistent management experience. There is no system center in the mix here at all. So what are the Microsoft Azure services that are coming to Microsoft Azure Stack? Well, you can see here, Service Fabric is the only service in preview. The rest will be, the rest in green boxes will be fully supported at GA. You'll see the app services with web and mobile platform services and the array of infrastructure services. One might remark on here, well, what about databases? Well, there will be SQL and MySQL resource providers into the mix. They are not indicated here, though, because they are being run with the Windows Azure Pack code base rather than the Azure code base. And I guess I would finally say that for customers who don't see their favorite platform service here, they can still run these in a POC by using standalone installers within virtual machines. And then they can just wait for the more prescriptive and opinionated platform service to come later on post-GA. Now, how do the Azure Stack services differ from their Azure counterparts? Well, there will be less of a number of API versions for each service. In other words, take virtual machines, for example. In public Azure, there might be 10 plus versions of the virtual machine's resource type, whereas in Azure Stack, there may be only 2 or 3. in sheer scale, very few customers are going to rival the scale of Microsoft Azure Public, and so that will be a difference, as well as the dependencies. Because quite frankly, not every Azure service is going to be a candidate for running on-prem using Azure Stack. So let's look at the infrastructure services roundup. What's coming at GA? Well, first of all, there's compute. And so A and D size virtual machines will be coming to the mix. You may even see a couple of other sizes come at GA. Stay tuned for that. VM scale sets that allow for multi-instance application tiers with automatic tiering, and then Windows and Linux containers. You'll find the usual suspects when it comes to networking, virtual networks, load balancers, VPN gateways, network security groups. You'll even find user-defined routes and networking virtual appliances. One that always comes to mind for me in the marketplace is from Kemp, their application delivery controller, and we're a big partner with Kemp. And then, of course, data and storage. You'll find table storage, queue storage, and blobs. And this is really all. The Azure Stack administrator, the typical IT professional in their traditional environments will be focused on these from an infrastructure management perspective rather than what's behind the curtains in the sealed, closed system, i.e. the software-defined networking and software-defined storage layers. So now I want to move into some demos. First of all, note that there are two distinct portals in Azure Stack, one for the administrator and one for the tenant. What I want to show here is when you first get Azure Stack deployed, one of the first things a service administrator is going to need to do is package up the services that they want to offer to their tenants for consumption, right? And so in order to do that, administrators will build what are known as plans. And those plans, the services within those plans will be limited for consumption using quotas. One or more plans can then be packaged up into an offer, and then subsequently tenants will subscribe to those offers to start using the capabilities. So we're as a service administrator here in the Administrator Council, and we want to go to the marketplace and create our very first plan. So we select tenants and offers and plans. Now, we're going to give this a meaningful name. I'm going to call this a standard IaaS plan. It's going to offer the usual infrastructure services with a standard SLA. I'm going to make a resource group that will contain all my plans and offers. And then we need to select the services. Since this is about infrastructure, we'll do compute, key vault, network, and storage. Now I want to be able to limit the consumption by my tenants of each of these services. So we'll create our first quota, which is a storage quota. I'll call this a standard storage quota. And you'll see that in the settings, I can limit the number of storage accounts that I can create and the size of those storage accounts. Let's take a look at the networking quota, where there are a lot more settings to choose from. Again, we'll keep our naming convention, call this standard network quota. And now you see we can limit the number of virtual networks, load balancers, public IPs, network security groups, and the like. So I'm going to skip over. I'm not going to do a compute and a key vault quota here. I think you get the picture. We'll just finish up and get this plan created. And we'll give it 1 second. Now we want to bounce over and create our offer. As I said, one or more plans with different quota limitations can be packaged up into an offer. So we'll keep our naming convention, call this a standard IaaS offer, and we'll put it in the same resource group we created for our plan. And then, since we only created one plan at the moment, that's the only one we can choose from, the standard IaaS plan, we create that. And we click save, and we get this going. Now there's one more thing that we need to do with an offer, and that is bounce over and make the offer publicly available for the tenants. So we go over, we're still in the admin portal, we go to the standard IaaS offer, and you see currently it's set private. Tenants cannot see it. Just a couple of clicks, we can change the state to public, and we're good to go there. Now we'll log in, we'll put on our consumer hat, our tenant hat, log into the tenant portal, and go to subscriptions. You see out of the box we don't have anything, so I'll create my first subscription as a tenant called IaaS subscription, and I'll go to the offers, and we'll see this offer I just created and made public. Standard IaaS offer. And then all I need to do is refresh the browser in this TP3R deployment. And we see our subscription ready to go. So what does this mean? As a tenant now, I'm ready to deploy workloads. Well, the fundamental building block when creating a workload in Azure and Azure Stack both is the resource group. As you can see, a resource group can have both platform and infrastructure services added to it. So the question is, what are the characteristics of a resource group that I have to keep in mind when I'm organizing these resources under here? Well, all of the resources are going to share the same lifecycle requirements, so they'll be patched and maintained as a holistic unit. Also, the resource group may share the same access control characteristics. So that's when you would package up resources into a resource group. So let's see this in action. As a tenant, I want to create my first resource group. But before I do that, there's this very cool feature I want to show called Marketplace Syndication. So Microsoft has made it possible for us to curate our Azure Stack Marketplace with gallery items from the Azure Marketplace to help us get started. So let's show what that looks like. As the administrator, I go to Marketplace Management, and you can see I'm currently downloading a SQL Server 2016 VM. And that's the gallery item that the tenant's going to deploy in a second. But first, let's add from Azure to see what's all available to us. Now, it's not everything in Azure, just a subset, but it will be a continually evolving list. So you can kind of see there's both open source and Windows. So if I say wanted to get a LAMP stack into my Azure Stack Marketplace, I just click it and do download, and we're good to go. But now we're back with the tenant hat on to deploy our first resource group, and our SQL Server 2016 gallery item that has been syndicated is there, ready to go. So the first thing that we need to do is name our virtual machine and provide some administrator credentials, and then we will add this to a brand new resource group. Then we need to choose a size of our virtual machine. Since it's SQL, we'll go with a DB2 size virtual machine. Then we get into all of our other resource group properties: virtual network, a storage account, network security group, firewall, the like. And then notice we go into, as a final step, all of the SQL specific stuff. Notice you can even put in automated patching and backup as part of this creation. And we save that, let it go, and boom, it's off and deploying. Now that's all well and good that we did that through the portal, but most organizations who are going to use Azure Stack, they're looking to build cloud native applications or refactor existing applications to take advantage of platform services. Going a step further, that means that they are probably already on the journey or already performing DevOps practices and principles, i.e. they want everything in code, and that includes the infrastructure. And so when it comes to codifying infrastructure in Azure and Azure Stack, we look to Azure Resource Manager, or ARM templates. These ARM templates can be checked into source control with our application code and deployed at will as part of a CI/CD pipeline. It simplifies orchestration and ensures item potency, so we can run these templates over and over again and not have to worry about clobbering workloads that are currently running in the environment. And when it comes to ARM templates, no tool does the job better than Microsoft Visual Studio. So let's look at how Visual Studio contains a bunch of great integrations for working with ARM templates. I'm just going to create a new project here in Visual Studio. And you'll notice Azure Resource Manager, Azure Resource Groups are right here at the top of the list. We'll give it a name and we'll select to create a new local Git repository for this. Now, we're not left alone if we don't know ARM templates. There are tons of predefined templates in the Azure Stack Quick Start repository in GitHub that we can choose from right here within Visual Studio. And so to start, I'm just going to go ahead and select a blank template to show you what files get created in Solution Explorer. You'll notice a couple of JSON files and a PowerShell script for automated deployment. That's all well and good, but I'm going to close this and let's look at something that I've pulled out of the oven, a complete SharePoint environment with a SQL backend and a brand new Active Directory domain. So we'll pull this up. First thing you'll notice in Solution Explorer, whole lot more files. Why? Because we've modularized it for maintainability. Now let's look at some of the other great integrations that you're going to work with ARM templates in here. The JSON outline. This is going to help you create and organize your parameters, variables, and resources that are part of a typical ARM template. You can see your various infrastructure elements there. And then Cloud Explorer. This is where we add our Azure and Azure Stack accounts and subscriptions so that when we deploy this, we can select either Azure or Azure Stack. So we define our infrastructure code once and then deploy on-prem or off-prem or both, depending on our application needs. So now we're going through creating a resource group. You can see we are naming our Active Directory domain here, pointing to ISOs for the software and putting in a product key. We're even using Key Vault here so that we can put in our new domain administrator credentials so that we don't have to expose those credentials in plain text in our ARM template. So we click OK a couple of times, save this to kick off the deployment. And you'll see first thing that all of the deployment tasks are being echoed for us right here within Visual Studio, rather than having to bounce into the Azure Stack portal to see how this is proceeding. So we see we're creating the template deployment, and we'll get just a resource or so deployed. And then what we'll do is fast forward this, take it out of the oven, as they say, and see the finished product. There's my Shy host SharePoint environment. And mainly I just want to show here, look at all what has been automated by code. We've got several virtual machines, we've got load balancers, we've got firewalls, we've got storage accounts, everything that's been automated from right within a template, ready to go. So that's all great. Show you some great infrastructure services. What about platform services? That's what really this entire solution is all about. So we're going to see preview at GA, Service Fabric, very sophisticated runtime environment for building your stateful and stateless microservices. We'll have Azure Functions that for event-driven serverless application techniques. We'll have app services that does web, mobile, and API. application development, very powerful. And then, as I had mentioned earlier with the grand Azure services slide, that there is SQL and MySQL for doing database as a service. Just keep in mind these are built on the Windows Azure Pack code base rather than the Azure code base for GA. So all that being said, platform services, let's see a demo of that. I want to, as a tenant, deploy .NET Nuke, an open source content management system. And DNN requires a back-end database. And so I've pre-created a SQL database called DNN-DB1 using the SQL resource provider. Sitting right here, and of most importance to developers would be our connection string here. But now, what's really cool is as a tenant, I can go over to my marketplace, and there's going to be a special section in there for web and mobile. And notice, there's complete web apps. This isn't just virtual machines, it's a complete web application ready to go. You know, put into the hands of your line of business application owners and developers via self-service. And so we put in a name, a resource group, an app service plan, which is the container for your application, and then we need to just test our database access and hit OK to continue to use that for our back-end database. We click OK, and we give this less than a minute. Actually, I'll bounce into the deployment tasks from right within the portal so that you can see this complete. And now we're ready to bounce over to the URL of this application so that we can start deploying DNN itself. What about introducing Azure Stack into an existing data center? No doubt you'll be concerned about monitoring. And so within the Azure Stack, you can kind of see what's in the sealed management layer to the right for Azure Stack. There is a special health resource provider API that is making available all of the alerting information from the software stack out to an existing monitoring ecosystem. As Nagios currently has a plugin, and there are management packs being developed for SCOM. Dell EMC adds Open Manage Essentials and Open Manage Network Manager for a much more granular look at the hardware itself. What about maintainability? Probably the best part of an integrated closed system is the maintainability and patch and update. When there are patches available, they come from us, Dell EMC and Microsoft combined. The payload gets delivered to your system, and you just get a notice in your portal saying you have updates ready to deploy. You click on the button when you're ready, and this all deploys firmware, drivers, all the software, everything in a fully automated and non-disruptive fashion. What about security? Huge subject there. All of the hosts are using UEFI boot, and the clustered shared volumes are all encrypted with BitLocker. But what if you need VM layer encryption? Well, you can use what's in our portfolio, CloudLink, that's been in the Azure marketplace for a long time. This allows policy-driven VM encryption and key management. And so probably the best part about CloudLink is it is cloud service provider and cloud platform agnostic. So from one central console, you can manage your VM encryption across AWS, Azure, Azure Stack, or even an on-prem vSphere cluster. And finally, recoverability. In the administrator layer, in that sealed layer, you don't have to worry about it. There's a backup resource provider that's periodically tarballing up all of the service data and tenant app metadata, sending that off to an SMB3 share for then further backup by your third-party backup software. What we really have to worry about as customers moving forward with this is protecting the tenant VM workloads, and that, as part of our offering, will be Networker. And we have a very extensive data protection suite, but we chose Networker specifically for its ability to use Azure Blob Storage as a backup target, and the fact that it uses a REST API. So the idea is going to be able to incorporate a backup option right into the Azure Stack portals while you're creating your resource groups that include VM protection. And of course, protection for the platform services, very application specific. But many ways to do that, as prior you saw, being able to back up a database, and the app services have recoverability options during their creation as well. So, if you're around at Dell EMC World this week, please stop by all the various sessions going on, or check our website for a lot more information about Dell EMC Cloud for Microsoft Azure Stack.